Hi, my name is Takuzo Ganre. I'm a former A-level student and I graduated high school with straight A stars, and I'm here to help you do the same, or if not, just to make A-level maths a little less challenging for you. So in this video, we'll be solving questions about finding the inverse of a function. Number 1. The function f is defined by f of x is equal to 2 times x plus 3 squared minus 7 for x is less than or equal to 4. Find an expression for f inverse of x and state the domain of f inverse. So let's start by finding an expression for f inverse of x. So f of x is equal to 2x plus 3 squared minus 7. Let's start by replacing f of x with y. So it becomes y is equal to 2x plus 3 squared minus 7. So our goal is to make x the subject of the formula. So let's move this negative 7 to the left hand side. So it becomes y plus 7 is equal to 2x plus 3 squared. And let's divide both sides by 2. Y plus 7 over 2 is equal to x plus 3 squared. Now to get rid of the power 2, we'll take the square root of both sides, and on this side, remember, it's plus or minus, and so this becomes x plus 3 is equal to plus or minus the square root of y plus 7 over 2. Now let's move this 3 to the right hand side, so it becomes x is equal to negative 3 plus or minus the square root of y plus 7 over 2. And now we can't have two signs, so we have to choose which sign is correct, and to do that we'll go back to the domain. So our domain has a less than sign, so that means we'll take the negative sign. If it had a greater than sign, we would have taken the positive sign. So in this case, we'll conclude that x is equal to negative 3 negative root y plus 7 over 2. And if we write it with the correct notation, it's f inverse of x is equal to negative 3 negative root x plus 7 over 2. Now the question also asks us to find the domain of f inverse. So the range of f of x is equal to the domain of f inverse. So that means we first have to find the range of f of x if we want to know what the domain of f inverse is. So we know that our f of x is equal to 2 times x plus 3 squared minus 7 for x is less than or equal to 4. So let's sketch that diagram. That would be, it has a turning point at negative 3, negative 7. So that's somewhere here, and the curve would look something like this. And we know that our domain is x is less than or equal to negative 4. So it means we're taking this point going onwards to the left. So it's this part of the curve that we want. And we need to find what the y value here is. So if we substitute into our function f of x, said f of x is equal to 2x plus 3 squared minus 7. If we substitute x with negative 4, we can find the y value at x is negative 4 minus 7. So that's f is equal to, if you punch that into a calculator, you should get negative 5. So this point here is negative 5. So it means our range, the y values that we're going to get from this function, start from negative 5 and they increase going upwards. So it means our range would be y is greater or equal to, remember that the domain that they defined has an or equal to sign, so it means y is greater than or equal to negative 5. So that means domain of f inverse is x is greater than or equal to negative 5, and this would be our final answer. Now let's move on to number 2. The function f is defined by f of x is equal to x plus 3 over x minus 1 for x is greater than 1. Find an expression for f inverse of x. So we're given that f of x is equal to x plus 3 over x minus 1. So the first step is to replace f of x with y. So it becomes y equals x plus 3 over x minus 1. Then we need to get rid of this denominator. We do that by multiplying both sides by x minus 1. So it becomes y times x minus 1 is equal to x plus 3. We expand this bracket, becomes xy minus y is equal to x plus 3. Again, remember that we're trying to make x the subject of the formula, so put all the terms with x on one side. So we're moving this term to the left hand side, it becomes minus x, and then we're going to move negative y to the right hand side, so it becomes y plus 3. And then factor out x on the left hand side, becomes x y minus 1 is equal to y plus 3. Then divide both sides by y minus 1 to make x subject of the formula. So it's x is equal to y plus 3 over y minus 1. And that is our inverse function. So let's write it with the correct notation. F inverse of x is equal to x plus 3 over x minus 1. That's the final answer. Now let's move on to number 3. The function f is defined by f of x is equal to x squared minus 4x plus 3 for x is greater than 5. Find an expression for f inverse of x and state the domain of f inverse. Let's start by finding an expression for f inverse of x. So we're given that f of x is equal to x squared minus 4x plus 3. Let's replace f of x with y. It becomes y equals x squared minus 4x plus 3. So if you're finding the inverse of a quadratic function, you start by completing the square. So let's complete the square here. That's x minus 2 squared minus 4 plus 3, which simplifies to y equals x minus 2 squared minus 1. And then from here, our goal is to make x the subject of the formula. So let's start by moving negative 1 to the left hand side. It becomes y plus 1 is equal to x minus 2 squared. Now we need to get rid of this power 2, so we're going to take the square root on both sides. And remember that on this side we have plus or minus. So it becomes x minus 2 is equal to plus or minus root y plus 1. Then we need to take this negative 2 to the right hand side to make x subject of the formula. So it's x equals 2 plus or minus root y plus 1. Now remember that we can't take both of these signs, so we have to pick one. So to do that, we'll go back to the domain of the original function, x is greater than 5. Since our domain has a greater than sign, it means that we're going to take the positive sign. So it means that here, for our inverse function, x is equal to 2, we take the minus sign, root y plus 1. If you write it with the correct notation, that's f inverse of x is equal to 2 minus root x plus 1. Now the question also asks us to state the domain of f inverse. To do that, we have to find the range of f. Range of f is equal to domain of f inverse. So let's start by sketching the graph of f. So we know that f has a turning point at 2, negative 1. So if we sketch, let's say 2 is somewhere here and negative 1 is here, so this is our turning point. Our graph would look something like this. and then our domain is x is greater than 5. So it means if 5 is here, we're taking this portion and going to the right. So this is the portion that we want, going to the right. If we can find what the y value is when x is 5, then we can find our range. To do that, we are going to substitute into f of x. We know that f of x is equal to x squared minus 4x plus 3. So substitute x with 5 and you get 5 squared minus 4 times 5 plus 3. So f of 5 is equal to 8. So that means our y value here is 8. And we're saying that the region that we want is this region here going upwards. So that means we want y is greater than 8. So the range of f of x is y is greater than 8, which means that the domain of f inverse of x would be x is greater than 8. And this would be our final answer. That's all for today's video. Thank you for watching.